Hi, I'm the History Guy. I have a degree in history and I love history. And if you love history too, this is the channel for you. When we use the term forgotten history, rarely can it be taken so literally as to be able to watch history dry up and blow away. So much of history has been lost to time, swallowed by the desert, that it seems so much more tragic when we can actually see that process occur in modern times. But so it is with the Great Blue Sea, which has been both a great driver of history and a victim of history, and today lives on the edge of forgotten history as history literally transforms into desert. What was once called the Great Blue Sea of Central Asia, better known today as the Aral Sea, was actually a huge freshwater lake. At one point, the fourth largest lake in the world, behind the Caspian Sea and Lakes Victoria and Superior. Once covering more than 68,000 square kilometers, the name Aral Sea roughly translates in the Turkic language group as the Sea of Islands, referring to the more than 1,100 islands which used to dot the massive lake. Like its larger cousin, the Caspian Sea, the Aral Sea is Indo-Rheic, and that means that it is a closed drainage basin with no outflows that is regulated by evaporation. The primary tributaries that feed the Aral Sea are the great rivers Darya and Darya. These two glacier-fed rivers are called thankless rivers because they naturally irrigate very little of the land through which they naturally flow. And while we think of rivers and seas as geography, in fact, they are also intrinsically part of history. The Darya to the north was known in classical antiquity as the river Jar-Axartes. It represented the northwest boundary of the Hellenic conquests of Alexander the Great. The Battle of Jar-Axartes in 329 BC between the armies of Alexander and the Scythians was fought along its shore and secured the northern border of Alexander's empire. The Darya to the south was known in classical antiquity as the river Oxus, and the river basin between the Oxus and the Jar-Axartes rivers allowed irrigation and agriculture, and thus gave rise to the great Bronze Age Oxus civilization. The area, also known as Bactria, was the birthplace of the prophet Zoroaster, who was the founder of the dominant religion of the ancient Persian Empire. Annexed to the Persian Empire by the Emperor Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BC, the area between the two rivers would eventually become part of Alexander's Macedonian Empire after he defeated the Persian Emperor Darius III. The eventual Greco-Bactrian kingdom was the easternmost extent of the Hellenic Empire. Supported by these fertile lands, the Greco-Bactrian Empire expanded so far west that some historians believe they made contact with China's Han Dynasty. And that allowed a transfer of technology that brought copper-nickel alloys to the Greeks and brought Greek influence on Chinese art, especially in the making of sculpture, which some think might have influenced the manufacture of the famous terracotta army of China's first emperor, Shi Huang. The Greco-Bactrian Empire was also the connection between the Hellenic world and the Indian subcontinent. While the river gave rise to the civilization also changed the river. The river empties into a delta, which goes both into the Aral Sea and via a distributary to the Caspian Sea to the west. In the 10th century, the people of the agricultural land built a dam that diverted the water to the Aral Sea. And then in the 13th century, the army of the Mongol leader Genghis Khan destroyed the dam, restoring much of the flow to the Caspian Sea and significantly reducing the size of the Aral Sea. Now, since then, the flow has shifted back north, and the Oxus since the 18th century no longer feeds into the Caspian. The area became part of the 19th century Great Game between Russia and Great Britain over influence in Central Asia. And it was taken by the Russians as part of the Russian conquest of Central Asia in the second half of the 19th century. Russia had a naval presence on the Aral Sea from the mid-1800s. By the 20th century, the Soviet Union became the dominant power, and conflicts in the area drove migration of many Central Asian Muslims to Afghanistan. Fed by the two great rivers, the Aral Sea became a major source of food for the Soviet Union, with its fishing industry producing nearly 1/6 of the fish that were eaten in the USSR and employing more than 40,000 people. But in the 1940s, the Soviet Union undertook a grand and improbable scheme to take the waters of the Syr Darya and the Amu Darya and use them to transform desert into a cotton-producing region. They literally remade the two rivers, building more than 25,000 miles of canals, 45 dams, and more than 80 reservoirs, and transformed what was once desert into one of the world's great cotton-producing regions. But the system was inefficient, and the canals were poorly built, and they lost lots of water to leaks and evaporation. And as the water was diverted and inefficiently used, the sources of the Aral Sea simply dried up. The Amu Darya Delta, which used to feed into the Aral Sea, is now dry, and periodically the Syr Darya also runs out before it reaches the Aral Sea. Between 1960 and 1998, the surface area of the Aral Sea decreased 60% and the volume decreased 80%. And as the volume of water decreased, the salinity level also increased and devastated the local fish populations. The collapse of the fishing industry has caused significant economic hardship, and inefficient farming and overuse of pesticides and fertilizers and the inability to maintain the system after the collapse of the Soviet Union have only made everything worse. The demand for water has never been higher, and yet the waste of water has never been greater, and the once prosperous area is now heavily polluted. Large areas of what used to be called the Great Blue Sea are now called the Aralkum Desert. The drenning of the Aral Sea has been called one of the planet's worst environmental disasters. The story of the Aral Sea shows the confluence between history and geography. On the one hand, it was the geography, the great rivers, that allowed the rise of great civilizations and facilitated both contacts and conflicts between civilizations. It was the meeting of East and West, an indelible part of the history of places like Afghanistan and Iran, and the future of places like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. But on the other hand, civilization transformed geography and turned the power of rivers and seas to serve civilization, but in doing so created new threats to that very civilization. And maybe the two will collide again. Maybe new technological and political solutions will come up with a way for us to bring back part of the Great Blue Sea. Or maybe not. Maybe it will simply dry up and blow away and become nothing but forgotten history. I'm the History Guy, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of my series, 5 Minutes of History, short snippets of forgotten history, 5 to 10 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, then please go ahead and click that thumbs up button that is there on your left. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest another topic for the History Guy, please feel free to write those in the comment section, and I will be happy to respond. And if you'd like 5 minutes more of forgotten history, then please go ahead and click that subscribe button that is there on your right.